everybody. My name is Laura and I'm the Customer Success Manager at Podcast.co. And today we're just going to be taking you through a pretty typical demo of the Podcast.co platform, so you can find out how you can get started once you've got those episodes recorded and ready, how you can get those online and then uploaded into the world for people to listen to, and also a few extra features that we have in our plans to help you promote your podcast and also keep tabs on who exactly is listening to your podcast. So I do usually do this segment with my colleague Daryl. He's not able to join me today, so you've just got me for today. So yeah, we'll dive right into it. And then if you have any questions as I go through, obviously leave them in the comments and we'll get to them at the end. I do have a few that people sent in already, so we'll get to those at the end. So yeah, let's get started. So as you can see here on the screen, I have a pre-made podcast all loaded up, ready to take you on a little tour of things. But just so you know what it looks like if you do decide to sign up with us and get started, this is the screen you'll be greeted with when you first sign in for the very first time. So creating your first podcast is super easy. If you're creating a brand new podcast with us, you click create a new podcast here. Type in all the different details, so your podcast name, what categories you want to be in, what language it's in, bit of a description. If you're on the business plan, you do also have the option to make the podcast private. I'll go over that in a bit more detail in a little bit, but that's something there that we do have available. On the next step after that, you'll be able to upload some artwork for your podcast. If you don't have that yet, that's fine. You can skip that step as long as you do have the artwork in place before you go through submitting your podcast out into the world, then that's fine. And then you'll be dropped exactly where I'm going to start this whole tour from. On the other hand, you might be joining us from another platform. So if you've already got a podcast created and you just want to move it across into Podcast.co, that's really easy too. You just click Import Podcast Settings, drop your RSS feed in here. That will then check through the RSS feed and just see if it can grab the artwork, the title, description, and how many episodes it picks up. So just check that that's all okay and it's managed to grab everything all right. And then you click Import Podcast, and that will bring all of that content into Podcast.co. And then the last step of that is you go back to your old hosting platform and apply a 301 redirect in there. It sounds complicated. It's not too bad. Most of the time, you just need to message their support and they'll put it in place for you. Other hosting platforms do have a way that you can do it manually yourself. We do have a bunch of guides for that on our help center, which is just help.podcast.co. So if you do need any help with moving over, there are guides in there, or you can message us and we should be able to find some instructions on how to help you with that. Brilliant. So once you've got your podcast in, it'll look a little something like this. So navigating an account is pretty simple. You're just navigating a podcast through this top menu here. So I'm just going to go through each of these tabs one by one and just kind of show you where everything is. And so you can get a bit of a feel for the platform. Then we'll be going over some network accounts really quickly. So that is an account that allows you to have multiple podcasts on the one account. So if you wanted to start a bunch of shows, you can have them all in the same account. And I'll be showing you how you can give access to different people and limit that access down as well, so people can't mess with each other's stuff. And then finally, I will talk a little bit on our private podcasting, because that's had a couple of improvements recently, and it's pretty exciting stuff to show off. So on this front here, so this is just how you would manage a normal podcast. So right off the bat, we've got this little home tab here, and this is just showing you a very, very brief overview of things that are going on with your podcast at the moment. So in here, I can see really quickly how many episodes I have live, my monthly downloads and monthly unique downloads. I'll explain the difference between those two in a second. And a graph that shows our estimated subscriber count. Now, the way that this works, I do get a few questions on this. It's pretty straightforward. So subscriber counts, accurate ones, are pretty hard to come by just because not every podcasting app counts subscribers, and not all of them actually give public access to the subscriber counts. It just makes it a little bit difficult and hectic. And also there's new podcasting apps being created all the time that people can subscribe through. So it just makes it a little bit complicated to get an accurate number for that. So what we've done here is we've given you this graph that gives you a rough idea of how many subscribers your podcast is likely at. And that just works out on an average based on the latest 3 episodes you've popped out, how many unique downloads happened within the first 24 hours of them being uploaded, and then it just works out on average based on that. So that's just to give you a rough idea. When you first get started as well on your podcast, you'll have a little checklist of 3 things to get your podcast started and up and running off the ground. Those will sit just below here. Once they're all ticked off, they'll disappear like they have here. And instead, you'll have links through to our free crash course that is completely free to sign up for. You get 1 episode delivered to your email inbox a day, which is quite nice. So you've got plenty of time to digest the information you get each day, and that's completely designed by our lovely CEO, James. So it's well worth signing up for. You've got the link through to our production services. So Podcast.co can operate as a full A to B service. We have recording, editing services, as well as the hosting platform, and distribution and promotion and all that stuff. So if you do need any help with production work at all, do feel free to get in contact with us, because we can probably sort something out for that. And also a link through to our help center. So every feature you see on this demo, myself or one of my colleagues has sat there and written a step-by-step guide for it, and then you can find all of those in the help center. So usually if you have any questions about anything, you can find the answer in there. And if not, we do have a little chat widget on the website to get in contact with myself or one of my colleagues if you have any questions. Next up is the episodes tab. So this is probably where you'd be spending most of your time, and this is where you would manage all the episodes of your podcast. And again, really straightforward to manage this. So once you've got an episode up and ready to go, you can either click and drag the file into this window and it'll start uploading, or you can click this orange upload episode button at the top, and that will just open up your file finder and you can grab the file that way instead. Once that's uploaded, this window will open automatically. It's just, I'm forcing it to pop up here, but this will open automatically, and then you can type in the title of the episode, a bit of a description about what's going on. Author you can leave blank if it's going to be the same person every single episode. It'll just pull in the main author that we set up in settings, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. So you can leave that blank. You don't have to fill that in every time if it's the same person. Episode type, we've got tags for trailer and bonus content in here, but most of the time you'll be using this full one that just means a normal full episode. Episode and season numbers are in here as well if you're using them. If not, you can leave those blank. Little content rating toggle. Our advice on that usually is just, if you think it's only going to be 1 or 2 episodes here and there that have explicit language in, turn it on per episode like this. If you think it's pretty much going to be every single episode of the podcast, there is a content rating switch you can turn on that applies it to the whole podcast automatically, so you don't have to remember to do this every time. And pre and post roll I will be coming to a little bit later, but this is for the pro plan and above only, and this is the toggle to turn that on and off per episode. But like I said, I'll be giving you a bit more information on that in a little bit. That's just how you turn it on and off there. And then once you've filled those bits in, the very last part of this, and again, I'm forcing this window to open, but it will appear automatically on a normal upload, is this one, and this is just deciding when you want the episode to go live. So public is going live straight away. Scheduled is if you want to schedule it up to automatically go out at a later date and time. So we have a couple of presets here, or you can select a custom date using the calendar and the drop downs here. And then that will go out on the 17th at 1 p.m. and I don't have to touch anything. So that's quite nice. And then unlisted is basically like a little drafts box. So anything in this section isn't publicly accessible unless you have the direct link to the content that's in there. So most commonly people use this for if they've maybe interviewed somebody that needs to approve the content before it goes out. They'll upload it into this section first and give the person a link. They can then check it all over and make sure it's all okay and they haven't said anything they're not supposed to. And then once they've given it the okay, you can easily move that over into published or scheduled depending on when you want it to go out. And then in here as well, you can see the list of uploaded episodes, the dates that they went live, and the times, how many downloads they've had. And then there's a few extra buttons on the end here. So share episode just gives you the embeddable episode players for this one episode by itself. So maybe if you've got like a blog style website and you want to put the episodes of your podcast at the top of articles that relate to them, this would be an easy way of doing that. So you've got a choice between a chunkier player at the top here with the artwork on it, or this one down here that is a little mini player option instead. You can change the color scheme of these as well, so you're not stuck with the black and purple you can see here, but I'll show you that in a little bit of time. Page here is the link to this one episode on the webpage that we provide you with. Again, I'm saying this a lot, aren't I? But I'll be coming to that in a little bit. But just know that that is a direct link to this one episode on the webpage we give you. File. So this is for some pretty specific use cases, but this is just a direct link to the MP3 file itself. So say if you weren't using our players on your website, you were using a third-party podcast player, most of them will ask you for a direct MP3 link. So this is what you would be grabbing. So we just made it a little bit easier for you to get that rather than having to skim all the way through your RSS feed code to try and find the MP3 link. It's just here instead. And then finally, we have the audiogram feature. So this is a built-in integration with Headliner. And it's a really, really cool little tool. It lets you make these really nice looking graphic style videos of your podcast audio content. So you can really design these up for your social media. A great way to use this tool is if you upload an episode before it's due to go out, and then use this tool to create some little promotional style videos of some interesting clips that happened during the episode, and then put those out as promotional material. That works really, really well, but it's a really powerful little tool. I really highly recommend getting on there and having a little play around with it. If you are going to check out Headliner just by itself, separate from this, just so you know, the account that we give you that's attached to your Podcast.co account is on the equivalent of their Pro plan. So you do get kind of like a 2-in-1 here, which is quite nice. Moving on this little tab, we have the episode analytics button. Now, mine are going to look absolutely terrible because this is not a public podcast, so yours will look a lot better than this, I'm sure. But in here, you can see the analytics for this one episode by itself. So as you saw me do there a little bit early, you can change the date range you're looking at up here by clicking the date range, and then we've got a few presets up the top, or you can select a custom start and end date on the calendar, and that all adjusts to the background. Should we try and get more than one download on there? That's probably a good idea. See if we do that. There we go. This top graph then shows you your total and unique downloads per day. So you can hover over each of these days to get an actual number for those. And then down the bottom, you've got where in the world your listeners are coming from, and also what platform they're using to listen to your podcast as well. And then just on the end here is what I like to call the rescue list. So if anything goes wrong with your episode, most of the time you can save it in here. So edit just brings up this window again. So if you've made a typo in the description, for example, you can come in here, correct the typo, and then click save, and that will adjust. Pardon me. Replace media is exactly what it sounds like. If you accidentally upload the wrong version of an episode, you can come in here, select the right file, and replace the file out without having to take the whole episode down and re-upload it again. Just saves you a bit of time there. Move to unlisted is exactly what it sounds like. It moves the episode into the unlisted section, just in case you need to quickly transfer something out of the way. And the transcription feature also lives in here. So if I try and find one that's not done. Nope. Okay, well, when you open this for the first time, it will bring up a little drop-down menu. There we go, like this. And from here, you can select the language of the main speaker and click continue. And then once you do that, it will generate a full transcript of the episode for you. Different plans have different monthly limits on this, but it is a really handy little tool if you're wanting to have a quick and easy way of just generating a transcript of your episode and then using that for a blog post, or for to provide alongside the episode for accessibility reasons. We have a number of customers using that in different ways, so it's worth just having a quick look at. Moving along, the analytics tab here is pretty straightforward. It's kind of the same as the episode analytics I showed you before, but this time for the whole podcast, so every single episode. So again, you can adjust the date range you're looking at up here. Let's go with the last 30 days, bring up some more downloads there. Same graph up the top showing your total and unique downloads per day. And same ones down the bottom showing the locations of your listeners and what platform they're using to listen. But you also get an extra one over here on the left that will show you your top 10 most popular episodes of the period of time that you're looking at, so that you kind of get a gist of what's been popular with your audience, or topics that you might bring back and revisit later on. Moving on down again, we've got settings. So this is all the main settings of your podcast. So if you ever need to do things like update the artwork or update the description, you can come in here and sort that out really easily. So it's all in here, as you can see. Down the bottom here, we have a little toggle to turn on a weekly digest email. Now, what that means is you will receive a weekly email. I believe it goes out every Monday, and it tells you what the stats looked like for the week that's just gone for your podcast. So it's just a nice and convenient way of getting some stats delivered to you without having to log in and out all the time. You can just get that delivered to you for convenience. Advanced settings here is super duper important, and I always emphasize that on these live streams that we do, because people miss this section quite a bit. So there's a few things in here that need to be sorted for things to work properly. So time zone is super duper important. I cannot stress that enough. If this doesn't match your time zone when you post out an episode, if it's scheduled, it'll be going out at completely the wrong time. And also your analytics will not be matched up with your time zone correctly. So it's worth coming in here and just double checking that this is matching your time zone. Author name as well is super important. If that's left blank, the system will do one of two things. It will either leave it blank, which can cause issues when we come to submitting the podcast to different directories, or it will, more commonly, it will pull in the account owner's name. Which is fine in some circumstances if it's just your own podcast and you want it to be your name anyway. But if you're making a podcast for a company, for example, it's not going to look great if some random person's name is in that box. So it's worth just double checking that that matches the way that you want it to appear in places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Further on down, we've got these content settings. So just making sure that these match up with the content you're putting out as well. There's that explicit filter for the whole podcast, just in case you were wondering. If you're on the business plan, you can turn our Podcast.co logos off on all of the embeddable players and the Podcast.co page that I'll show you in a little bit. So that little toggle is just there. And then right down the bottom here, this media URL prefix box is basically a box that allows you to connect up some third-party analytics services. So things like Chartable or Podtrack, they give you a tiny little prefix URL that you need to attach to your RSS feed. So instead of messaging us, you can just come straight in here, copy and paste it into that box and click save, and that will attach it for you. Nice and easy, and then they can get all that information that they need to get. Advertising here on the left is something that's available on our Pro plan and above, so not on the starter plan. And this is a basic way of adding in some sponsorship messages if you have them, or some people even use this for a standardized intro and outro to their podcast as well. So how this works is you would just go away, record your sponsorship messages or your standardized intro and outro separately. Then you would upload them into these sections. And for every episode you want to apply these to, you just turn that little toggle on I showed you before, and it will automatically stitch that to the beginning and or end of the episode for you. So nice and simple, and just saves you a little bit of editing work if you do want to use it. One thing to mention on this is it is a hard edit, so if you later on change the messaging in these sections, old episodes will not update to have the new messaging, they'll still have the old, but any episodes you turn it on for after that upload point will have the updated messaging on. So it's just worth bearing that in mind. One last thing to mention on the advertising front, actually. One of the big developments we're working on this year is we are looking at getting a dynamic ads platform integrated with Podcast.co. The guys are working really hard on that at the moment, and it's probably one of the biggest development projects we're doing this year for the platform. So it is worth keeping an eye out for that. It'll be available later this year, so that's pretty exciting. Moving on, share and publish here is the distribution section. So this is usually where a lot of questions come up. So remember, if you do have any questions, this is live, so you can ask any questions you want to in the comments, and we'll be getting to those at the end for you. But this is a pretty straightforward section as well. So once you've got at least one episode or your trailer uploaded, you have to have at least one episode uploaded. You can come in here and you can go through distribution, which is getting your podcast out there so people can actually listen to it. So we give you two different options for this. I prefer to manage this myself. Is basically, if you want to manage the whole process yourself, you can click that, that's no problem. That then collapses away. You've got a link to your RSS feed right here with a quick copy button at the end. And a bunch of boxes down the bottom here to pop the link into your podcast on all the different platforms once you get them back. And that will link it up to things like the embedded podcast player and also the page that I'll show you in a bit. And also there's a link through to our help guides on how to submit to all these different platforms as well. We're not just going to leave you in the dark. We do have a step-by-step guide for each of these platforms on how to submit there. So that's there if you need any assistance with that. However, the more popular option is for us to take over the submission for you. So for that, you would click the other option here, Distribute My Podcast. That then sends a request through to our submissions team, and they will pick that up and start working on that for you. You'll get email updates throughout the whole process. So one when they pick it up and start working on it, one halfway through, once they've submitted to all the different platforms, they're just waiting for responses back. And then one final update via email once everything is done with all the links on that email. But you can come in here and grab those links at any time as well. So all of the logos start grayed out like these ones here. And as we get you submitted on the different platforms, they light up in color like these ones. And you're able to copy the link or open your podcast on that platform and check it out, make sure it's all okay. So it's really easy to keep track of how far along they are with this process. Podcast player here is the embeddable player with all the episodes on it, but it's also where the color customization lies for the player that I mentioned before. I told you weren't stuck with that black and purple. So this is what the big player looks like with all the episodes on it. This subscribe and share buttons, they also pop out and give you all the different options for where your podcast is live. Here's the color customization bits down the bottom here. So you've got to choose between a light and a dark theme for the player. And the accent color can be literally anything you want. So if you have got branded colors, you can type those in down there. That will adjust for you. You can turn sharing and subscriptions on and off depending on what you want people to be able to do using the player, but most people just leave those on, to be honest. And you also have an extra option down the bottom here to change the mini player from squared off or rounded off, just depending on what aesthetic you're going for. Last thing in here is the subscribe button, and this is another embed that we made for your website. So you can choose between a dark and a light theme for this again, and change the color of the word subscribe to whatever you'd like. And then you can select up to 5 directories your podcast is live in, and on hover, it will show those lovely options so people can click through to the best option for them and go and subscribe to the podcast. And finally, we have the page that we provide you with. So this is just a kind of basic landing page for your podcast. Maybe if you don't have your own website, then you can use this. If you're on a business plan, you do have the option to just turn this off and not use it at all at the top here. If you have your own website, perhaps, that's totally fine. You can turn that off. Otherwise, on the other plans, it is just on by default. The link defaults to pod.co / the name of your podcast. However, on the Pro plan and above, you can custom that down here. So if you want to apply a custom domain to that and make it look a bit more professional, you can do. Just below that, you've got the option to add in an email address so people can contact you via the page, and then you just turn it on using this little toggle here. And then people have the option to contact you about your podcast, which is pretty useful to turn on just in case any potential sponsors find you through that page. They've got an easy way of reaching out to you then. If you're on the Pro plan and above again, you can add in a Google Analytics tracking ID down here. So that just allows you to keep tabs on the traffic coming in and out of the page, which is, everybody loves more analytics. Further down here, you've got social media channels, so you can connect all of those up so people can find you on social media really easily and go follow you. And then down the bottom here, we've got donation links. At the moment, we have fields for Patreon and PayPal. We have been getting requests to add a bunch of different donation platforms lately. So the guys will be working on adding in a custom field in here so that you're able to have a generic donate button that you can apply any link to instead. So if you're not using either of these platforms, you're using something else, you'll still be able to apply a donate button at the bottom of the page. Design on the left here is all the color customization, font options, and the header image options. So you can really play around with these, brand it up, make it look like your own. And then down here is the options for the header image at the top. So it defaults to our color and wave design, like you can see here. But you can apply a custom background image if you'd like to. We've got size guidelines for that in the Help Center. If you have a custom background image on here, you might not want this overlay with the artwork and title on it, so you can turn that off and just have a clean header image there if you'd like to. The About section defaults to the main description of your podcast that we saw in settings earlier on. But if you're on the Pro plan and above, you can change that to be whatever you'd like, and you can also embed video clips like I have done here, or images if you would like to. And the final thing, again on the Pro plan or above, is this little host section, which allows you to create a little profile for the host of the podcast so people can find out more about who you are as a person, which I think is quite a nice little touch for people just being able to find out who they're actually listening to. So you can create a little profile like I have done here. So if I just show you what this page looks like with some very, very basic setup, to be honest. So you can go a lot more in depth with this. So as this podcast is in seasons, you can see it's got a couple of season tabs right here that I can flick between. Because I've got something tagged as a trailer, there's a play trailer button up the top here. If I click on that, it will open up the trailer down there, ready for listening. And you've got all the usual listening controls down here, including speed. The subscribe button pops out, gives you the different options for where the podcast is live, and the share button does exactly the same thing, but we've put the link to the podcast down here as well, just in case we missed any. Below the episodes is the About section with that video I embedded in here. That all syncs up and works okay. And then a little bit further down, you've got the little host profile there with my lovely face on it. And a little bit just below that, you've got the donate button here, which is Patreon for mine, and the contact button just at the bottom there. So that's with some very, very basic, straightforward setup that took no time at all. So I'm sure you'll be able to make that look something splendid. And that's pretty much a basic tour of one podcast. So just to quickly go over a couple of extra bits. If you're after an account that allows multiple podcasts on the same account, like this is what it would look like once you've got a few set up. So they come in a tiled layout here in alphabetical order for ease. And you can just add extra podcasts over here really easily, as I showed you before. So that's really, really straightforward. We have the Pro plan that allows you to have up to 20 podcasts on one account. And then the business plan allows, pretty sure that one's limitless, so you can have as many podcasts as you like on that account. And then the other cool thing that I mentioned before is also the collaborators. So if I come in here for a sec, this is a list of people that have access to the account, and you can add people in really easily here. So you just add in their email address and then what kind of role you want them to have. So admin has access to pretty much everything in the account apart from the billing section. Account owner will always just be you. There's only ever one of those. And then limit to specific podcasts is how you limit people down so they can only access specific content. So if I wanted the lovely Jack, who's actually managing this stream for me, if I wanted to give him access to the podcast, I can pop the one I wanted to have access to. We'll give him access to Mike Jet 1-2 in there as well. And then there's two roles within that. So podcast manager has access to everything to do with those two podcasts. And content creator means he would only have access to the episodes tab that I showed you for those two podcasts. So he'd only be able to upload episodes and edit them, move them around. He wouldn't be able to access anything else. So really, it just depends on how limited you want their access to be. But that's a pretty easy way of just managing who has access to what on the account. And then the final cool thing that I was going to show you guys was private podcasting. So we've been doing quite a lot of work on this recently. So if you're looking at having maybe an internal podcast for your company to keep all your staff up to date with the latest goings on in the company, or something similar to that effect, you can set up a private podcast. And what that means is it won't be publicly available on all the different directories. It will only be accessible to those who have been given access. So it works exactly the same way, but you can see that the last couple of tabs on the other account I showed you have been replaced by this one that says subscribers. So in here, you can manage who has access to the podcast. So this first little one here, manage subscribers, shows me a list of the people that have access to this podcast. I can see what date they were added to it, and I can get a copy of their unique RSS feed URL. So not one person has the same RSS feed URL. Everybody has a different one that's unique to them. And then you also have the option to remove them from the podcast as well on this side. Add subscribers is how you would add subscribers. Hold that thought because I do have some more information on this section. But this is kind of a manual way of adding subscribers in. So you can add them either by having a list of email addresses separated by a comma and just pasting them into there and clicking add. Or you can whitelist an entire email domain like I have done here with Podcast.co and Radio.co. And that will automatically accept new subscriber requests from those domains. And the landing page to get through would look a little something like this. So if someone doesn't have access at the moment, they'll see something like this. And basically, they would type their email address in. If they've got access, it'll say you've already got access. If they haven't got access, it will send you an email saying that they've requested access, and then you can accept or deny from there. If they have access to the podcast, this page will look slightly different depending on what device they're on. So for instance, I'm on a Mac computer at the moment, and if I was to access this page and I had access to the podcast, it would show me Apple Podcasts, and that would give me a really easy way of adding the podcast to my own personal Apple Podcast library just by clicking the icon. It'll ask me if I want to add it to my iTunes library. I click yes, and then it adds it to my little library as if it were any other public podcast, and I can access it just the same. It updates exactly the same way. So it just makes the listening experience a little bit easier. Obviously, if you're not accessing on a Mac computer, it will come up with different options depending on what device you're accessing it from. So it adjusts the list to have the most appropriate options on there. So that's kind of how you would manage that. One thing that we are working on at the moment is SSO as well. So if you didn't want to manually add your subscribers and change them around and things, we are currently working on implementing SSO instead, so you can manage your access list through that. Instead, which should make things a little bit easier for some of the bigger organizations out there, or people that just want to have a bit of an easier system. So if you are interested in that type of setup, just drop us a message letting us know. We'll start a conversation about it and see if we can get something set up for you. That's no problem. So that is pretty much the end of my little tour here. So if I can have this screen go away and just go back to me. Hopefully, there we are. So yeah, we did have a few questions that came in prior to this recording. So I'm just going to go through those very quickly. If you do have any more questions as I'm going through these, do leave them in the comments, and I'll be sure to get to those as well. But the first one here is, how long should a podcast episode be? That question is kind of like how long is a piece of string type of question. So generally, we recommend podcast episodes staying around the 20 to 40 minutes mark, just because after that time, you generally do see people starting to drop off and lose focus. So 20 to 40 minutes is probably about the sweet spot for an episode. However, if it's a subject that you feel needs to be covered in more detail than 20 to 40 minutes will offer you, an hour should do. I wouldn't generally go over an hour if you can help it. If you need to, I would recommend breaking it into two or three episodes, and just making it a part series in that case, just to make sure that your audience is retaining that information and retaining that focus on the episode. Who owns the content I upload? That's a good question. I do get asked that one quite a lot. So you always own the content that you upload. We claim no ownership over that at all. You can find all of that in more detail in our terms. So that's just podcast.co/terms. So if you do want to go and read up on that, you're more than welcome. But yeah, the short version is we don't own any of your content. It always belongs to you. Can I share music on my podcast? This one comes up every single time. So if you're sick of hearing this from the other live streams, I apologize. The short answer is no. If it's copyrighted music, we don't advise doing that. The reason being licensing in the podcast world isn't quite there yet. There's not really a license that decently covers podcasts for copyrighted music as of yet. So if something ever comes about for that, then absolutely just make sure you get yourself licensed. But as of right now, the answer would be no. If you're going to put music in your podcast, just make sure that it's copyright free and royalty free. We do actually have our own music library that is completely pod safe and free to use. And that is at podcast.co/music. So if you are looking for some music to stick behind people talking in your podcast, or even as an intro or outro, go and check those albums out. They're made in-house by one of our wonderful production team, who's very talented, and he put those together for us. Do you limit the amount of episodes I can upload? No, we don't. So every plan that we have available, we don't limit the amount of episodes that you can upload. Obviously, that comes with some sensibility. Please don't go uploading 7 3-hour episodes a day. We will probably reach out to you and have a bit of a word about that. But say you just wanted to upload a daily podcast, like 1 episode a day that's like half an hour long, completely fine. We're not going to pester you about that. You can upload as much as you want. But we do limit the amount of podcasts you can have. So podcasts, not episodes. So the starter plan allows you to have just the 1 podcast with unlimited episodes. The pro plan, as I said before, is 20 podcasts with unlimited episodes in each. And then the business plan is unlimited podcasts with unlimited episodes in each. But yeah, you can find out more about our plans on the pricing page. That's podcast.co/pricing. So you can find all the different plans on there with a bit more detail as to what each one includes as well. And the final one here is, can I try it for free? Yes, you can. So we actually operate a 14-day free trial period. So if you want to get signed up and you want to test things out and see if we're a good fit for you and your podcast, by all means, just go to the website. That pricing page is probably the best area to go to. Choose the plan that suits you the best, get set up on there, and then you'll have 14 days free to just test everything out, see if it's a good fit for you. If it is, then the subscription will automatically roll into a paid subscription at the end of the trial. If it's not a great fit for you, that's fine. You can cancel at any point during the trial, and you won't be knocked into that paid subscription at the end if you do. So I kind of whizzed through the questions there, but I think that is it for today. So thank you so much for joining me and finding out more about Podcast.co. If you do have any further questions about anything you saw today, you can reach out to us either via the website, Podcast.co. There's a little chat widget in the bottom right. I'm usually sat on there weekdays, Monday to Friday. So by all means, get in contact via that. Or you can email us at help@podcast.co. that will also get through to me, and I'll be more than happy to help you out with any further queries you've got about anything. Other than that, have a fantastic weekend, and I look forward to talking to some of you very soon.
Hey, before you go anywhere, I have a quick question for you. Do you have a podcast? And if you do you want to book more interesting, high-profile guests on your show? Well, if you answered yes to either of these questions, I'd love to invite you to come and join our community over at matchmaker.fm. Matchmaker is a service that connects awesome podcasts just like yours with incredible and high-profile guests that make for really interesting conversations. It's really straightforward to get started and completely free to sign up. Just connect using your LinkedIn, Facebook or Google account, and then you can begin connecting with guests based on their area of expertise, location and much more. If you haven't checked it out already, go to matchmaker.fm, get started. It's just like Tinder, but for podcasters.